Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you've just heard, we're here to discuss the growth of multi-screen and second screen interactions. We've got a great panel with us today to talk about that. You've just heard who they all are. So I was going to jump straight in and ask Samantha what it is that the BBC World News is doing in this space.
So I work for BBC World News TV, which is the commercially funded 24-hour TV news operation of the BBC, and it's shown in more than 200 countries around the world. But I actually work on the social media output of that channel. So we work across a variety of platforms, in particular on Facebook and Twitter. And we do it for a variety of reasons. First, for news gathering, which we can get into at a later stage. Also to understand the sentiment of what's happening on the ground in different countries on different stories, but more importantly for engagement. So engaging with our audience in a way that we hadn't done 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And that engagement really is the key to second screen use. And having engaging content across those platforms, knowing that those people, when they do tune in to BBC World News, they're either going to be distracted by something else on their phone or they're going to be interacting with us. And on those platforms is what we want them to do.
And Nart, how does that compare with Sky News' approach? Are you there because that's where audiences are and it's defensive, or is it active at the same time?
I think, it's pretty much the same. I don't think anyone's really reinventing the wheel here with a lot of these things that are happening. But I think from a point of view of a broadcaster, if you look at it that you're a news organization, you don't look at it as if you're a broadcaster or if you're a website or anything like that. You're a news content provider, and this is what you do, and this is what you're trying to push your content and your news to as many outlets as possible. So in a sense, second screen or any other technology that comes and follows, that's really the main. You have to follow that and try to make use of it. So we heard about multi-skilling, and then it's multi-screens and multi-everything. So it's really part of life now. It's part of what we do, and this is a normal progression. You just have to make sure that you're going along with the technology in order to make sure that you're pushing your content to as many people as possible, and also create a conversation, because it's all about engagement and creating a conversation with your viewers and with your users, because it's not just about what you think, it's what they think as well. So a lot of the intelligence of what you can get on what's happening on the ground from a news gathering point of view, but also it's research on its own. It's research by its own merit that you can understand what people are interested in. And it's very funny because you put something out and then you realize that everything that you've worked on for a couple of days, that's not the thing that attracted the most attention. And it's, I don't know, a biggest shoe or biggest whale or something like that. And then you say, what am I doing? So it's a great opportunity to get the intelligence and understand what we no longer call them viewers. They're more like users than viewers now. So it's really it's part of any strategy, and anyone who doesn't is in the wrong century.
How does it differ from a sort of more of an entertainment point of view, Eric?
Well, so we represent writers, directors, actors, producers, and we've always encouraged them to tweet along with their shows. We heard from Twitter and about sort of these now moments. And when you have a show where everybody is watching the season finale of Breaking Bad or whatever it may be, it's important that our talent is also there, in part to raise their profiles, but also in part to create a experience with the show. But I also believe, and I'm a huge fan of Twitter and the relationship between Twitter and television. We worked on Scandal, right, which in America, which partially the success of Scandal was because every single character on Scandal was tweeting with the show, and they tweeted the West Coast and the East Coast broadcast in the States, and people all of a sudden really gravitated. They found out about it on Twitter, and then they went over to TV. And so I think that relationship is really important, and we encourage all of our clients, whether they're a writer in the writer's room or the star of the show, to really engage with their audience.
And Antonio, how are you seeing this sort of stood up or backed by actual trends? Are you seeing data that proves that people are more engaged than ever?
Yes, in McKinsey we have done for many years now a global survey of viewers and digital consumers, we would call iConsumer. and it covers all the major geographies in the world. And what we have found out in the last 5 years is a very significant shift, especially in the US and Western Europe, but moving also to the other geographies, of viewers moving away from traditional live linear TV into a world of more random viewing, more over the top, and more segmented. For example, classic live TV has lost about 20% of viewers' minutes in the US in the last 5 years. And increasingly, those minutes have been captured by second or third screens, either on smartphones or on tablets or PCs. And this shift also has coincided with a shift in terms of preference for content. We see a lot more web-designed content and video type of centric models rather than traditional TV series. And also, the emergence of specific niches of people, such as people who are very much focused on watching internet video, or people who want specific content in terms of sports or movies only, or other segments. And this is shifting the dynamics both of the broadcasters but also of the content producers.
How do you decide when, obviously there's a plethora of platforms, many services and platforms. How do you decide where to place your bets? Because it must be difficult. Where do you start, and how do you then follow that?
I think you have to be across all the platforms of the people that you want to get in contact with. So BBC World is across Facebook and Google+, Twitter, now Instagram and YouTube. And because in certain regions, or depends the audience that you're trying to get to, and also the discussion that you're trying to have. So for breaking news, we find Twitter really, really useful. But to have a discussion around a topic and to go delve in deep into a topic and find out what people are actually discussing about, whether it's Iran's nuclear talks in Geneva last week, we'll use a platform like Facebook because it creates more discussion, people can respond to each other. But you should be across all the platforms. That's the whole, you can't pick a platform. You should be across all of them.
Is that how you operate, Nart? Do you
have
go to where audiences are?
Well, of course you do. And also sometimes things are dictated upon you. So if you know that in a particular region, this is where the audience is going, or this is where the users are, this is where you put your efforts into it. So it's perfectly normal to try to get as many. It's all about pushing your content and getting as many people as possible to see your content. So it's really normal to try to do. I mean, we do things like we have a linear broadcast of a program, but we will create a panel of discussion with personalities around that program. So you're always trying to get as much longevity of a discussion of a topic on social media and through other screens, while your discussion can go on for half an hour. And if you catch it, you do. If you don't, it's gone. So with using these other platforms and using whatever possible tools that you have, you can continue the discussion before, during, and after, and come up with new things. So it's always trying to find which way you can get your content out and engage as many people as possible. So it's a combination of these two.
And how do you, it's interesting you mentioned personalities and getting them engaged. Eric, how do you balance that between a broadcaster's strategy and perhaps an individual that's a star of a show or a presenter or a writer? How do you balance what a broadcaster's doing with what an individual piece of talent is doing?
Well, so I think, let me answer that in two ways. First I was going to say, it's interesting because this is a second screen panel where we talk about, the social networks and the other tablets being the second screen. But I actually believe for a lot of people, and especially younger people, Twitter is the first screen, right? And we go to Twitter first. And especially now in the States, Twitter launched the Watch Now button, where if you have the certain cable provider, you're actually going to be able to see content by hitting a button. So we also think as representing talent, that talent needs to produce great content for the social web. Because for many people, that's the first screen. That's how they find out about these people. And that's really important. The second other interesting part is especially as we talk about advertising, we're now measuring and using data to understand when we have talent send out a tweet about a show and then people tune in, that is incredibly powerful as a piece of advertising. So as agents who negotiate deals and contracts on behalf of our talent, we're now measuring the impact, and Twitter came out with their Twitter Nielsen ratings and so forth, but we're now measuring the impact. So if you're paying $3.2 million for a Super Bowl spot, but my client's single tweet actually gets more volume and buzz on Twitter than your Super Bowl ad. You know, how are you compensating our talent for that? So I think on the talent representation side, we're trying to innovate as well to figure out how their massive audiences should be used for this.
And it's important to get the tone of voice right as well, isn't it? I mean, do you work with different, do you put the same message out across multiple platforms, or is it important to tailor messages?
I mean, I'll take that. I mean, basically, yes, you have to produce, otherwise it's labor intensive. So you have to find a way that, and we've been very lucky at Sky News and Arabiya as well, because it's a new channel. So we've been able to build our systems from within. Our DNA is built in a way that when you produce a certain piece of content, it's not very labor intensive to try to distribute it as many places as possible. But just to pick up on a note as well, the fact that commercially, and I'm talking about this particular region as well, linear TV is still king, and that's where you make your money, and that's where that's how you're judged, that's how your ratings work, and it sometimes is very frustrating because you know on these other platforms you're doing very well and you're getting a lot of traction, and probably if you compare it in some different kind of units, you should be making a lot more money than you are. But in reality, this region is still a linear TV commercial model, and until these things try to pick up and start to pick up with changing the model, and maybe we'll come up with a model which is different to the region, that is not comparable to anything in other parts of the world. So that's the comparison is very difficult, but it's very, very challenging when you know that you're doing well on all these other platforms, and commercially you're trying to pick up with the other things. So it'll take a few years, I think, for us to try to monetize it a little bit more. And the other point is that maybe this is a technology issue. The people who run the technology have the biggest chance of actually making the most money, because if you can put advertising on both or your 2 or your 3 screens at the same time and finding a way to do that, this is not going to, it might be out of our hands. So that might be a bit more dangerous position that we would be in, that a tablet producer is able to advertise with the TV if it's the same brand in a different way, that we won't be able to benefit from it. So all these models are still coming out as far as this region is concerned, and it's very, very challenging, and in some cases exciting as well.
So you're saying it's not cost effective at the moment, it's not sustainable, it's a cost, and you're not benefiting financially from this activity that you're doing?
Well, not at this particular point, but it's interrelated as well. You can't just say you're not making, because that's how you bring eyeballs to your main screen as well. But
so it's a marketing expense at the moment.
Of course, but at the moment, where you produce revenue is from the first screen, I'm afraid, is still in this region. and then you make it from the other screens. But it's all about creating awareness about your brand, creating awareness about your news and your programming. And that is a very effective tool. But when it comes down to it, you make money from spots in this region still.
But I agree about the platform also. I think there is a great war happening right now, at least we see it in Hollywood, between Twitter and Facebook to get the talent on, to get the talent engaged and using it. I think having talent on the platforms, creating content on the platforms, is both now networks, social networks, Twitter and Facebook really want. And more is being written, and now, and more resources are being poured in on the platform side to make sure that our talent is engaged on all those platforms. And I think it's going to be very interesting. You're seeing now Facebook make a lot of television deals, and I think it'll be very interesting. We're at the very early stages of this, and it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
And I think when people are using that second screen and they're in their homes, they don't want to be talked at the way that you do in TV news. They want a whole different voice. When they're looking on that second or that third screen, they want to feel, let's say, Kamla, one of our presenters, is actually talking to them on their news feed, and it's like one of their friends. So the tone and the content that we make for that second and third screen is very different to what we broadcast on TV, because it has to be different.
People, and now we don't know how to deal with it. It's the same thing as going from black and white to color TV, and then creating, and you don't have to walk 5 meters to press the button. Then the remote control was created, then the smart TV and the whole thing. And now this is part of it. This is all just a part of the evolution of media, and this is not something that you can say, I either will do it or I won't do it, because if you don't do it, you'll still be with the black and white TV.
And who benefits? The viewer, the broadcaster?
Of course, it's all about the viewing experience. Everything is going to benefit, and whether you're trying to avoid something or you're trying to, jump on the bandwagon, this is natural evolution. This is not something that you can change, and this is part of what we do, and this has to be part of what we do for many, many years. That's the way life is now.
And the ones who do it best create great content for the first screen, full stop. Great content for the second screen, full stop. So you can enjoy it just on the second screen. You can enjoy it just on the first screen. And if you watch it together, now you're having an amazing time, if that's how you want to view it. So there's sort of content for everybody who wants to see it.
And we're also getting to the stage where we're generating content on the second screen that we're using on the first screen. So if we take the Australian bushfires this week that are still burning outside of Sydney, we put a post and we've got one photo in from a fan in Australia, and we asked them, we posted that picture because pictures and videos work extremely well on second screens in a way that just text doesn't work. And we posted that picture and asked them to send in any other photos that they had. And we then eventually had this huge gallery of viewer photos that not only worked really well on the second screen because they're something that people share virally, in particular personal photos, but we also then ended up using it on our first screen, on our TV broadcast, to say, this is what you've been sending us, this is what we're getting in, and we're using that. So, the broadcaster is benefiting as much as the audience are from this.
But you have to check they're not fake.
Yeah. The verification, yeah.
I just wondered if I wanted to open up to the floor and see if anyone had any questions for anyone on the panel. Yes, there's a gentleman here, if you could just...
I also hope you're all tweeting this panel, because this is actually a two-screen panel, so... Or not.
Hi. So a lot of...
Could you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is David Haddad. I work with Publiseek. So obviously this is about TV, and a lot of it is financed by advertising. There's been this shift of budgets, advertising budgets from TV and other traditional stuff to online. Where is, at which point should there's a continual moving of money from traditional to online. At which point should the balance be? Are we there yet in terms of the kind of the allocation of money or of budgets? Or at which point should we say this is enough? TV's got enough, advertising.
You don't seem to think there's enough money currently. So
I don't think. I think if we're talking about how it's going to be, I think this is going to be a non-discussion in a few years, because at least again in the region, we are still a TV-oriented business. But as you see, and as you said as well, there is a little bit of shift. But there has to be a way where it's not a balance of who's getting more. It's about which organization or which channel or which news or entertainment is going to be more profitable. But I don't think we should look at it that way. I guess in your line of work, maybe you have to, because it's about budgeting, it's about what's the next year going to be. We're going to put a little bit more. This website is very successful. Let's put a little money onto this and onto that. I think this is going to be a non-discussion in a few years, where you're just putting money into particular content that is going to be getting you the results that you want. So it's about, again, it's about the program, the content, you have to dissect it in a completely different way in the future, but we're not there yet, and it's going to take a long time. And as long as the financial model and the commercial model in the region is following the same step of who's going to win and who's not going to win, should we put more money in there, then it's going to take a long time for real change.
There's a gentleman at the back.
Maybe the question wasn't for me, though. Maybe it was for...
Hi, David Moore here from Abu Dhabi Women's College. I'm one of those people who actually doesn't watch the first screen at all. I literally get all of my information, news, from Facebook, from the online newspaper, and I actually watch subscription movies, and that's it on the first screen. Am I a growing number of people? Is this something that concerns, you guys?
Well, for me, and in terms of the offering that we offer for BBC World News, I understand that a lot of our audience, we have 4 million people that engage with us on Facebook, let's say, and some of the countries that I've been to, they're very like you, like let's say Burma, lots of different countries in Africa and Asia. They don't use the first screen. Their full service is on the second screen, and it is, as Eric said, their first screen. So we try to provide them with the best news service on those social platforms, because in some countries, they will pick one social platform. They won't go to websites. They won't visit, they won't use email. The majority of people will use one social platform for all of their engagement online, and we need to be on those platforms, giving them the best news service that we can.
And also, just to complement that, our analysis has shown that historically about a quarter of the population, at least in the Western world, is not even watching the first screen, as you say. They're relying on printed media or on radio or on other types of information or entertainment. Now, this quarter of the population is still there, but we see the rise of another percentage, mostly the youth-oriented segment who uses the second screen, not the traditional printed media. So if anything, I would say, still the first screen, the linear media is still the king, as we said. But, people of your profile are, becoming more prominent, I would say. Yeah.
No, I think, when you buy something off iTunes or, there are other ways to monetize you.
There's a lady just here in the middle.
Hi, I'm Mariam Al-Shamsi. I'd just like to add to what you just said. I was going to speak for my generation. I'll just give you a scenario of how I go about all these media platforms, for example. I watch all the series that I want through Apple TV, or I download them through torrent, so I don't go through any type of advertisement there. I don't have the time to sit in front of TV because I have a lot of work to do, and sometimes I'm studying, sometimes I'm at work, and then just the social life that I do with my friends. When it comes to, for example, news content, I have Flipboard on my phone, and I generate whatever content that I want. When it comes to, for example, Twitter, I already, last year I'd say some of the things that you said were valid, I need to validate and so forth, but now I have, for example, generated the right lists and the right people that I would know they would get me the right source. So far, I have no interaction whatsoever with any kind of advertisement, and I manage the kind of media that I want to watch. So what would you say about that? And I speak for a lot of people in my generation who does the same.
That's why I said Twitter is the first screen for many people, right? And
not just Twitter, by the way.
No, I know. And by the way, something that hasn't come up.
Google Hangouts is doing well.
No, I totally agree. And I think something that hasn't really been talked about is YouTube, right? And so our clients are now creating channels and companies and next generation media entities that are on YouTube. We represent a guy by the name of Brian Robbins who created Awesomeness TV, and Awesomeness TV is a next generation media company, and we just sold it to DreamWorks for a ton of money, right? And so people know that and understand that, and we're now creating content for that.
But there's no contradiction. You're absolutely right, and that's probably how you consume your content. But there's nothing wrong with that. If when I have a piece of news which is generated by a journalist on the ground, and I'm putting it on screen, and I'm putting it on, and he's tweeting from the ground, and the piece that he's just done is edited and put on YouTube, and on Facebook, and on all of these things. My challenge is to get you to consume your content through your own means that's coming originally from me. That's my challenge. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for you to, you have to watch TV between 8 and 9. I'm not. You're never going to do it, and I wouldn't ask you to do it. All I would ask is that when you want to follow news on a particular topic, can you just put us on your list of things that you look at? That's all it is.
And we're going to need Sky and the BBC to confirm the noise that we're hearing on social media and sort of be that voice of authority, I believe.
Of course. So you might see a certain topic that relates to it.
I was just questioning the point of where we keep saying that TV is the dominant thing, because I believe that a big chunk of my generation, and now you prove me wrong, that a big chunk of people here in this region, and I know that more than 70% actually, in the UAE, more than 70% in this region use mobile phones and internet penetration. So I think I wouldn't say by now that TV is the most dominant. I think we're evolving.
No, what we're saying is that commercially it still is.
Yeah.
Commercially it is, but we still need to find new revenue models. So anyway, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for all your... So I'm sorry we didn't have time for all the questions, but the guys will be around after, I'm sure, if you want to catch them in the hall. If you could join me in thanking the panellists.